Thom Hartmann here on the news. You need to know this. Osama bin Laden is dead. U.S. forces shot and killed the leader of al-Qaeda yesterday in a highly secure compound just 35 miles north of the Pakistani capital of Islamabad. The body of bin Laden was secured and identified using a sample of his brain tissue before being buried at sea in accordance with Muslim traditions. President Obama addressed the nation last night to say, "We can say to those families who have lost loved ones to al-Qaeda's terror, justice has been done." So what happens now? Setting aside the morale-boosting effects that the death of bin Laden will have on U.S. forces and the consoling effects that the death will have on people who lost loved ones and the political effects for President Obama, does taking out bin Laden really change anything in our war on terror? Does it at least validate our efforts in the last decade? Our nation is vastly different than we were 10 years ago when we set out to get bin Laden. And I think you'd be hard-pressed to find one person who would argue it's been changed for the better. And as a result, there are more men, women, and children that want to kill America than before we started. And despite the trillions spent in our so-called war on terror and the news we've made, we can't honestly claim we're any safer today. Yeah, we got bin Laden, a criminal's dead. But looking at the list of problems our country is still facing at this hour, because we decided to react to a crime with a multi-trillion-dollar war, he was really the least of our worries. It's time to end our wars. In the wake of bin Laden's death, Interpol issued a media advisory calling for extra vigilance by law enforcement authorities to a heightened terror risk from al-Qaeda affiliated or al-Qaeda-inspired terrorists as a result of bin Laden's death. The Department of Homeland Security, on the other hand, is not raising any terrorist warnings, claiming there is no credible evidence to suggest an attack. The Taliban has promised to avenge bin Laden's death, claiming they'll carry out attacks in Pakistan and America. Let's hope bin Laden still doesn't have a few shots up his sleeve from the grave. In the best of the rest of the news, questions are being raised today regarding Pakistan's role in the death of bin Laden, or more importantly, Pakistan's role in hiding bin Laden all these years. The compound that bin Laden was hiding out in was literally just down the street from the Pakistani military academy, meaning it was pretty unlikely that Pakistani intelligence did not know what was going on right under their noses, which could explain why U.S. Special Forces swarmed the compound without notifying anyone within the Pakistani government or military. Meanwhile, upon learning that bin Laden was killed in Pakistan and not Afghanistan, Afghan President Hamid Karzai renewed his call for a withdrawal of American troops from his country, saying, quote, "The war on terror is not in Afghanistan. Osama was not in Afghanistan. They found him in Pakistan. The war on terror is not in Afghan villages. The war on terror is not in the houses of innocent Afghans, but in the safe havens of terrorism outside Afghanistan," end quote. Clearly, bin Laden's death will be a game changer in the region, but figuring out just how that game is going to change is going to be the hard part. The U.S. is involved in another high-profile military operation over the weekend when NATO forces bombed one of Muammar Gaddafi's mansions, killing his youngest son and 3 of his grandchildren. Gaddafi claims he was the intended target of the blast, having narrowly escaped the mansion before the attack occurred. A NATO commanding officer alleges the mansion was actually being used to coordinate military attacks against rebels. All along, NATO has said that their mission in Libya was not regime change, but instead to protect a vulnerable population. This recent attack that nearly killed Gaddafi himself and did kill his family suggests possibly otherwise. In news back at home, the California state legislature is considering a proposal that would make banksters pay for the home foreclosure epidemic. 1 out of every 5 home foreclosures in the country occurred in California, costing the state more than $20 billion in lost property tax revenue, as well as the maintenance of abandoned lots. To recoup these costs, Democratic Assemblyman Bob Blumenfield introduced a bill that would fine banks $20,000 for each home they foreclosed on. If passed, the measure could raise $12 billion to aid local governments who are struggling financially to deal with the foreclosure crisis. I'd say, considering that the banks created this mess and that many of these foreclosures are actually illegal, paying $20,000 each is the least the banksters can do. How about a year in jail per home, too? Democrats in Wisconsin are finding it pretty easy to collect signatures to recall Republican state senators who supported Governor Walker's union-busting efforts. Enough signatures have already been collected to recall 4 sitting Republicans. On the other hand, Republicans are trying to target Democrats for recall and having a little bit of trouble so they had to hire corporate signature gathering operations. Therefore, predictably, names of dead people are fraudulently turning up on the Republican recall petitions. And last month, Republicans had to promise free drinks at a bar just to get people to sign. As Wisconsin Democratic Party Chair Mike Tate said, the Republican forgery of dead names on recall petitions represents a new low for Wisconsin. It is voter fraud at its most aberrant, and it must be investigated and explained. Of course, when it comes to election fraud, nobody does it better than the Republican Party. Crazy alert, a classic and violent case of miscommunication. Florida bar was the scene of a stabbing over the weekend. A group of deaf friends were at a bar together using sign language to converse when a woman mistook one of the gestures as a gang sign. The woman, with members of her gang, one armed with a knife, confronted the group over the mistaken sign, and a fight ensued. 4 people were injured. So much for using the works every time pickup line, "What's your sign?" And that's the way it is today, Monday, May 2nd, 2011. I'm Thom Hartmann on the news.